Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me from the mysterious realm of Canada, ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for my host companion, Sejan Sarowick.
Hey everybody. Yeah. Well, oh God. So today we are talking about a film that is what are we on? The 10-year anniversary, right?
Yes, it is the 10-year anniversary of this film, and before we tell you the name of the film, though hopefully the title and the description has clued you into it, I have to ask Sejan a question.
Oh,
Now,
yes.
now a little bit of behind the scenes. I'll open the curtain inside baseball. Moments before I smashed record on our on device that we record using, I Sejan said that he had some questions that I hoped that I could. Yeah, Sejan had questions he hoped that I could answer, and my response was, "I have questions that I hope you can answer." So, ladies and gentlemen, cross your fingers with us now that we don't have the same questions for each other. Or this is going to be the shortest episode in the history of the Say Report. But the question I need answered, Sejan, is does this take place in the year 2010?
No. I feel like okay. So let's talk about this movie, guys. I'm pulling the plug on this. We're talking about Scott Pilgrim. It has been 10 years since the movie came out. Instant cult like status when it did come out. And I mean, I still feel after rewatching 10 years later, deservedly so. Like I am not here to like bring down this movie in any way. Still got the poster on my wall. The love in my heart for this movie. I'm not gonna lie, but there's definitely some stuff to be talked about with it, especially 10 years out. But yeah, Dev. I don't think that this takes place in a time and place that we can really kind of pinpoint, even though that we are given a place and all that, and there's a lot of reasons why. Not least of which because I don't think that I'm far off in saying that this is basically an anime story, right? Like this is Canadian anime, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think that the writer of the books, Scott O'Malley, right? That is who it is, right?
Yeah, it's Brian
Um,
O'Malley.
Brian O'Malley, right? I want him to just be Scott, which I'm sure that some of Scott is him, but also we'll get into that. But Brian O'Malley and like I don't think he'd be insulted by me saying that this is heavily inspired by some of the crazy ass anime of the 80s and 90s, right? And so that being said, the movie feels like it's kind of out of space and time, and I think that it plays with that. With I mean, Ramona literally having a super space highway between dimensions.
Specifically a subspace highway, not a
Sub,
superspace highway.
right?
A
Thank you.
subspace highway would not intersect with anything on our plane. A
Right.
subspace highway would,
Right.
because that's something I know about quantum physics.
Right. So I mean, like this, and it plays with a lot of things that are not real in our world, but clearly are real within their own, right? Like there are things that happen in this world that people don't blink an eye at, and even when they do blink an eye, it's always more of a not surprised one. I'm thinking specifically of Scott trying to figure out how what's her name April there, how she does that thing with her mouth, right? The joke that he makes about her at the coffee shop when
Aubrey
she's swearing.
Plaza.
Aubrey Plaza, yeah.
Julie Powers is her name.
Right.
And I know that
Ju-
because when I read the graphic novels for the first time, the fact that her name is Julie Powers and Ramona Flowers, I'm like, did you like just rhyme all the words together, Brian? Like, is that how you come up with lady last names?
Well, so I think that this is definitely a case of like there's a weird sense of this story in every aspect, including up to Edgar Wright making this film, where it never asks to be the cultural like emblem that it inevitably becomes, both in graphic novel form and then eventually in film form. I don't think that this is the kind of movie that like demands that you respect it as a piece of cult art. You know what I mean? Like there's movies out there where you can tell that that's what they're aiming for. That's what they're trying for. Whereas the good stuff is the stuff that isn't trying for that. It's just trying to have a good time. And if you happen to come along for the ride, all the better for it. And that's what makes it still enjoyable to me. Is like there's never a moment where I feel like this movie is trying too hard. And I think I can say that a lot about a lot of Edgar Wright stuff. I don't think that there's anything that Edgar Wright has done that he's ever been like trying to be Edgar Wright while he makes it. He's just trying to do is what he thinks is fun in the moment. And it just happens to be something that resonates with me, at least, right? I don't know. Do you disagree with that?
Loves Edgar Wright. I mean, there's an episode way back in the archives called Siegen Loves Edgar Wright. I mean, I'd like to readdress my question of does this take place in 2010? Because in addition to this being a celebration of the 10th year anniversary of Scott Pilgrim versus the World, this is also a time capsule episode. We are recording this ourselves out of space and time for, some time that we need to drop this on the super space highway.
If we're anything, we're meta this episode.
Yeah,
like this everything about this episode is just gonna be meta.
It has to be. Julia Roberts gonna love this episode. That being said, the reason why I asked is because looking back from 2020 at 2010 of this world, because I was curious, like all I could think was, is this 2010? My initial thought with this being a time capsule episode, we're talking about something that already existed so that it doesn't have an expiration date. Thank you, Alex Inc. Is that our world has changed so dramatically in 10 years.
Yeah.
And that was the thing I wanted to address, like, first and foremost. No one in this movie has a smartphone.
Yeah,
and
for
that's,
sure.
And that makes sense because
we actively see like straight up flip phones. Yeah.
And that's what we had back then. Like the Apple iPhone became a big deal in 2010.
But it doesn't ever like zoom in on like a fucking Nokia flip or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like yes, they have a flip phone, but it's like a nondescript one from a distance, right?
Right, because all the marketing and deals went to like Nintendo. So that they could actually use, and Coke Zero, so that they could actually use the sound effects from Link to the Past. But right. I needed to, that's the question I had, because that was the thing that stuck out to me, like, most of all, is that, holy fuck, our world was drastically different 10 years ago. And I didn't know if, like, it was supposed to be the 90s? Or like the early 2000s, like
this movie, this story, and let's just focus on the movie, because if we try and bring in everything, it's going to be a fucking 5 hour.
It'll be an odyssey, and I didn't do enough work for that. We can do that sometime, but this is the movie.
Yeah, this movie very actively tries to displace itself from any time and space, and it does that in a bunch of ways. So we've talked a lot about the video game stuff that's in it. We've talked a lot about the technology and stuff that's present in the world itself, the set dressing. But like, you also have to acknowledge that like the music is not like a specific genre of time and space, right? Like you have everything from trash punk to like techno, like
to the Rolling Stones.
Like, right, you have the rolling, So you've got so between the soundtrack and the music played within it, like you have all these different styles, all this different type of time and place that is being addressed to the point where you can't pinpoint it, right? I think this movie actively fights to be put in any specific time and space. I mean, even the joke, and part of this is from Brian O'Malley for sure, but even the joke about it being in the distant land of Canada, well, it does actually then kind of, for the most of this world, and you know, forgive me for speaking from an American perspective, but that does kind of take it out of a realm that I'm familiar with, right? Like, so this place where it is constantly snowy, but yet it's like New York City, and like there's like the music scene seems pretty fucking rad, and there's back alleys that they fight in, but then also there's like, you know, playgrounds that they're able to have romantic walks through. Like that kind of stuff really does make it so that I can't really put my finger on the time and space of this film for sure.
Which is probably why they shoot in Toronto so frequently, because it in and of itself is out of time and space. Good, I'm glad.
The castle that they use is definitely like the Descendants and Queen Mansion castle, isn't it? Like it must.
Oh yeah, Casa Loma is used for a bunch of. It is a real location, and one of the specific reasons why it is part of the original source material and then reflected in the movie is because if someone like Lucas Lee were coming up from America to shoot a film in Toronto, it would be shot at Casa Loma.
And Say Report fans will remember this is the castle that we briefly mentioned in the X-Men episode because
Yeah.
it's also used as the X-Mansion and like everything. Yeah. Yeah. So like it shows up everywhere. Yeah, so Scott Pilgrim versus the World, everybody. Like let's talk about it. For
Let's
anybody that
talk
doesn't
about
know,
it.
it's about a young man, Scott, and interesting to me watching it now how much younger he feels than he did when I saw it 10 years ago. I mean, surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Right. But the idea that 32-year-old me watching this is like, oh yeah, like Scott's an idiot and a young guy. Like he's still figuring his shit out. And that's kind of the point of the story, but it really hits home more now than it did then for me. And so he is trying to find himself after high school, is finding himself bouncing off of one serious relationship, kind of in like a rebound relationship with a girl that is clearly not right for him. And we'll get into the if, ands, or buts about that. But then in the midst of all of that, finally meets somebody that actually kind of like, what's the best way to put this? Like, imparts on him the need to grow up. You know what I mean? She never says to him like, grow the fuck up. You know, like even in their worst moments, she's just like, you're just not in the right place for me right now. That's not saying to him like grow up, like you need to be somebody different. She's just like, you are going to become somebody soon, and maybe that person is the one I'm gonna like more than this one. And like, and I've heard those words, like as somebody that has like heard, you know what I mean? It's that idea where, and I want to try and give Ramona as much credit as possible because later on I think we're going to have to do a lot of dumping on a lot of different characters in this movie. And so I want to make sure that we give credit where credit's due while we can. Like everybody tries to respect everybody. All of the good guys try and respect everybody in ways that they can, but they are all terrible people, right? Like, and they are all products of their terrible environment, and like they're shitty to one another, but like there is clearly a love between them. You know, like I think the clearest example of this is the relationship between Scott and Kim the entire movie, the drummer of his band who he has had a past relationship with, and like you sees the ways in which she gives him shit and she pushes him and all this, but also at the end of the day, she fucking has his back. In the last moment when he finally shows up and he reveals himself to be who he was always meant to be, like she's the first person to get up and scream and celebrate for him, right? Like, so like there's clearly a love between the two of them, despite the fact that it was like burned by Scott, right? So anyway, yeah, so like you get a lot of that attitude. There's like this weird like cynicism to the love in this world, but there's clearly a lot of love present, which I think is really kind of something that I picked up on this time that I hadn't the first few times I watched it. And I think that might be because of the way the world's changed in the last decade, like you said.
Yeah. I think that I focused a bit too much on all of these people are garbage people.
Mm-hmm.
And like, and that's no disrespect meant to any of the characters in this film. I will say that.
No, it's hard not to.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
really hard not to.
I mean, and I specifically wrote in my notes, you know, secret MVP is Aubrey Plaza as Julie. Like, definite MVP is Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Ramona. And then I gave, you know, other shout outs to other people. Like, I think that Jason Schwartzman as Gideon, for everything that he represents within it, he is just slaying. There are people in this film, Mae Whitman, like, there are actors on display in this film who are just, like, acting circles around other people in this movie. But
honestly, the weakest link, God love him, is Sarah, right? Like Michael Cera as Scott is honestly the weakest actor on screen.
Yeah.
But in that same way, it's that constant question that you always have with Michael Cera, where is he a weak actor, or is it just that his character,
or is he just
sucks?
playing this character so
right.
well?
Right. And he you know, I all power to a dude that finds that thing that works for him. Like he finds these characters that you have to wonder how much of it is his acting and how much of it is just the character, you know, and maybe that speaks to how good of an actor he is. I don't know.
Right. But and also Kieran Culkin. Kieran Culkin is the other one that I wrote down.
Wallace.
Like, yes. Wallace is freaking. But all of them are kind of garbage people. And then the last thing I wrote is, oh my god, 2011 to 2017, like till the Say Report, that was my Scott Pilgrim phase. And what that really means, what that translates to, is that I was in my fucking 20s.
Yeah.
And it's like, so these people, you look at them and you think, oh my god, how are you doing this? How are you acting this way? Why do you think that's the right thing to do? And the reason is because they are young. And I'm never a big fan of that as an argument for someone making bad choices. I think back to an event that occurred during that Scott Pilgrim phase of my life where a roommate of a friend put her hand in a blender, and I wasn't a big fan of this person anyway. And I'm like, well, that's dumb, but that makes sense because she's dumb. And the entire room like jumped to her defense that she's not dumb, she's young. And I'm like, yeah, but at some point there's got to be a line that you draw. And hand in the blender, that's dumb at any age.
Right, but that's what this movie is, right? This is the line in the sand, and Scott either has to grow up or he's going to be dumb the rest of his life.
Exactly. Perfect. You made that work better. I didn't even get to mention that it wasn't like a regular blender. Like I say blender, you're thinking of a smoothie making blender, right?
Yeah.
No, she put her hand into something that she was using an induction blender in.
Oh God.
So she actively had to keep blending as she put her hand in.
Jesus.
I'm just saying. But you're right. Yeah. And that's an extreme. But you're not wrong. This whole movie is about learning that you're 22 and the fact that, oh, I'm young and I don't understand the world, that's not an excuse for much longer. And for you, that expiration date is coming right around the bend.
Well, and so let's talk about Knives, because I think that like at first pass, there's a lot of issues with Scott and Knives' relationship in retrospect. She is a 17-year-old girl still in high school. He is 22. There's a lot of weird on the fence talk about whether or not it's cool that he's dating a high school girl. Certain characters are like proud of him. Other characters call him out, though. So clearly it's not cool within this world necessarily, but there is a lot of that weird conversation. And I think about like, you know, being in college and thinking about some of the conversations that we had, you know, about people around us and the relationships that they had and things like that. But taking a step back from that and thinking about it through this idea that the whole thing is about Scott refusing to grow up, it makes total sense, right?
Yeah,
he finds a girl that idolizes.
Yeah.
Right. He finds a girl that idolizes him, and a girl that is younger than him, and a girl that makes him feel like he's still a kid, right? And can get away with that, you know. And even he is kind of not cool with it himself, but like that doesn't forgive him. And the movie doesn't forgive him for it either. Like I said, he does get called up on it quite a bit. So like, there was just some real cringy stuff that happens in this movie. And I think Knives being a really perfect example of this, his relationship with Knives being a perfect example of this. And I think the only reason it's cringy for me, though, is because of how kind of real it was. So like, I don't want to say that the movie's unwatchable. It's totally watchable. It's just like, I spent this time watching it being like, oh no, like these people suck, and like, oh no, my friends suck, and like I suck. It just became this whole revelation, right, about like shit, being in your 20s is just, early 20s especially, is like the worst.
Yeah. Along that same line, for me, this film, a lot of what it does that we're going to touch on later on, it uses Hollywood morality. And that is a very important term, I think, for understanding cinema in general, not just Scott Pilgrim. What'd you say?
Yeah, Edgar Wright especially. I think there's a lot to be said, but you go ahead, because
but Hollywood morality.
Put a definition to that term.
Yeah, but Hollywood morality is that these are the things that Hollywood uses, their visual tells, so that you can know if someone is a good guy or a bad guy.
Right.
And this film traffics in that to an absurd level. And it's something that we've talked about a lot, especially with our last 3 episodes examining the films of Jim Carrey in 1994. Like, Mind Control is bad, but The Mask hypnotizes a woman and makes her sing Cuban Pete.
Right.
Like, right? But Gideon Graves...
And it's a good time.
Yeah. He mind controls Ramona. We're way far from that. But, like, a good guy, a good male character does not hit a woman. Mm-hmm. So that's why they have the whole Ramona using him as a puppet thing.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Then she's defeated via orgasm. Like, so the film does a lot of
and straight up, what's his nuts hitting Knives is used as like a huge definitive turning point in Scott's character.
Yeah.
Todd when
Todd
Todd hits
Ingram
Knives.
punches the
Yeah,
highlights out of her hair. Yeah.
right. And
Like,
it becomes this thing where it's the first time that Scott shows that he does care about Knives on some level, despite the way he's been treating her the whole movie. We get to see, oh no, it's okay that he's been treating her like garbage this whole time, because at the end of the day, at least he wouldn't hit her, is essentially the moral of that moment. It's
right.
like
Exactly. But those are Hollywood levels of morality. No
right.
good person, no white hat is going to traffic in these less than honorable actions, right?
Right.
And
Well, and again, so I think Edgar Wright really, really buys into that concept in a lot of his movies. I honestly think that if you take that concept and really blow it up, you end up with Hot Fuzz, like, which is like a celebration of that exact kind of sense in all macho, like machismo action movies, right? That idea of Hollywood morality, forgiving the crazy tone deaf like good guy for all of the blood and gore and treatment of women that you see in those movies, because at the end of the day, we are shown that he's a good guy in other ways, whereas the bad guy is just evil.
right. And that's you're not wrong. That's definitely what, like, Edgar Wright, what drove him to making movies was more or less seeing that and being like, I want to do that. This is how I want the world to be, and I will create that in films. I have no proof of that, but based upon his oeuvre, that's what you can see. But the issue is another check in the bad column in the Hollywood morality scale is dating someone underage.
Right.
And like you said, like, it's too real. It's also existing in this, fantasy realism of the movie. But, being the crazy person that I am, because I live in the state of Rhode Island, you grew up in the state of Rhode Island, where I was aware that the age of consent was 16, and I was made aware of that fact because when I was friends with people who were freshmen in high school and they were dating older people, like, they trumpeted it. Nobody had the fucking Romeo and Juliet law laminated, but they were all about the fact that, age of consent in Rhode Island is the age of 16. And I'm like, that's a weird thing to keep trumpeting over and over and over again. But
Yeah.
but now I watch a lot of things. Like, I watch a lot of shows that feature like pedophilia or a character who's accused of being a pedophile. Breakout Kings has an episode where, like, the whole reason that the guy is in jail was because he was dating a girl who was 17 and he turned 18, and then her parents turned him in. And I'm like, well, he's from New York though, so the age of consent in New York during this time was 14, because the Child Brides of New York was still a huge fucking deal in 2011. So it's like, it's just one of those things where, like, Hollywood has told us that the age of consent across the board needs to be 18. Anyone below that is pure, and if you do anything with them, you're a villain. And, like, I mean, I looked it up because, like I said, I live in Rhode Island, and the age of consent in Canada is 16. So on a legal scale, purely legal, not talking about the morality of it, Scott is well within his rights. And I almost feel like that's one of the reasons why they said it in Canada. Like, from the beginning.
No. I mean, part of it is because Brian Lee O'Malley is Canadian, isn't he? Doesn't like
I don't know his thing.
I'm pretty sure that Scott Pilgrim takes place in Canada in the books. Like, I think
it does take place in the books in Canada, and I think that's one of the things that makes it okay. I feel like an editor or someone doesn't look at that and say, well, you need to make her 18, because they're like, well, it's Canada, it's got different rules, it's got different morality. And it's this weird thing that, like, but you have that moment, and then the rest of the movie is, like, leading the charge on Hollywood morality, and it becomes a little bit difficult to root for Scott, not just because he's doing it. Like, if he were, like, in a happy relationship with Knives, I still think people would get squicked out by it, but then you watch just how kind of awful he is to her, and it's like, if it were a good relationship, I'd kind of get it. But the fact that you just have this sycophant who you're telling is your girlfriend because it makes you feel older and cooler and more powerful, like, it becomes hard to root for him.
Well, I mean, what it does is it sets him up against Gideon at the end of the movie, right? And it basically mirrors what we see, and essentially what we see is Gideon chooses the dark side. He decides to like lean full on into this and literally mind control women to be with him, whereas like Scott is close to that with Knives, and he learns by the end of it to not do that, right? So there's this sense of growth in the way that honestly the relationship that he has with Knives is the most like I was about to say healthiest, and obviously that's not the case, but is like the clearest indicator of Scott growing as a person is the way in which he interacts and treats Knives through the whole movie, right? Sometimes to a fault, like we mentioned with the scene with Todd, which in the climax of that relationship when Todd hits Knives and he freaks the fuck out, right? And there's even, so this kind of brings me to one of my questions. I might as well just ask this now.
Yeah,
I know
go
it's
for
kind of putting the cart before the horse, but there's this almost this feeling like the end of the movie kind of does a switch on you, and like it's not enough for me to feel like it's not written well, because it is. Like I actually very much love the end of this movie, specifically the last moment of him and Ramona going off together, because shock and surprise, in this romantic comedy they end up together. But there's this feeling that almost he comes to terms with the fact that he should have always been treating Knives better, and now him and Knives are connecting on this specific level. And I don't know if this is true or not, but there's like all of this talk about how this was one of those like Game of Thrones style, like this movie started getting made before the last book finally came out. They didn't quite know where it was going to go. Original ending, like people start screaming Snyder cut, like the Knives got done dirty, and that the actual ending should have been the two of them together. And it's kind of hard for me to not get those feelings from some of the stuff that happens in this movie, right? That he kind of comes to terms with the fact that with the ways that he treated her was not great, and that she is actually like very good for him in a lot of ways. I mean, the things that they enjoy together, the time that they spend together is actually like pretty valuable to Scott in the end. And so there's also this weird sense with the Hollywood morality stuff that like it's in this movie in particular packaged up in this idea that he is growing up and out of it. So is that not okay too? Like, I don't know. Like, it just feels squishy the whole time. You just feel squishy the whole movie about it.
Okay. So I love that you asked me this question, because I have information about this movie. Specifically, this is where my glass is the fullest.
Here we go.
The first draft of Scott Pilgrim movie began to be written after only 2 books had been published.
Out of 7 altogether, or out of 8 altogether?
Out of 6.
Out of 6. Okay.
Brian Lee O'Malley says that he had the basic story structure written out, but only 2 had been written out, and I believe only the first one was published. And that's where it was when the script started to get written. And a lot of me believes that they intended in the beginning to do that sort of Harry Potter with this and adapt all 6 books as a separate movie. Especially when you consider that for such a long time, Scott Pilgrim versus the World was going to be titled Scott Pilgrim's Precious Little Life, which is the name of the first volume of the series. So that's numeral 1, is that they didn't, it wasn't all completed at all when they started writing it. But by the time the movie came out, all 6 books were available. I had read all 6 graphic novels before the movie even released in theaters.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so the feeling that is that like they got to the end of this movie and the 6th book dropped and they were like, rewrite, like let's jump in real quick and like tweak some things, not necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater, but like let's definitely fix some stuff up. But there is also a very strong sense that O'Malley is very much involved in this movie, at least as much as any first time writer really is in any of these types of projects. But like I don't know. Yeah, it's got a weird sense at the end where you're not quite sure if he is meant to actually like in this journey realize that he is supposed to be with Knives or not, which just adds to the weirdness of the whole way he acts to her in the beginning.
Right. So the original ending of the film, Scott wound up with Knives. Ramona, I have to go off, right? I still need a fresh start. They leave. Scott and Knives, they walk off into the sunset together. And it was through his growth by being with someone with Ramona, he learned that, I actually care about knives and she is the healthier choice for me than the woman I literally objectified this entire film. And now that I'm more adult, I can be in a relationship with knives. And test audiences, by all accounts, from what I know, did not like that and felt that he should wind up with Ramona. And that is why the ending got changed.
I wonder when that happened though, because time to drop the big secret about me in this movie. I saw this movie 6 months beforehand in a test audience. Like there were effects not finished in the version that I saw. And it was this movie. Like there's a couple of jokes here and there that have definitely changed. I can't even remember them now, but like it was this movie. And I remember like having to go and like hand my cell phone in and everything before we sat down. It was real fucking wild. It was a weird time. And so like how early is that decision being made? Like I just wonder. Like it was a weird it's a
Okay, so this is
I can definitely see like that being the case because like I said it feels like that even in the movie itself. I just wonder like how fast they make that decision because fuck me like it didn't even stand a chance.
Right. This is the first time that I had ever watched the movie, like start to finish, knowing that the knives ending existed. And because I was watching it with a more critical eye, being more analytical of the story, I'm like, oh well, that's what this whole movie is leading towards, is Scott getting back together with knives.
Yeah.
And Ramona is, as so often the people we date in our 20s, just like a rest stop on the way to where Scott's supposed to be in life.
Yeah. The one thing that I will say about that, about the triangle between the two of them, is I don't know if I would have been okay with the idea that this girl that is putting him on a pedestal this whole time, like she wouldn't have gotten any growth in that version of the story, and that wouldn't have been cool. Like she would have been, she would have been falling all over herself for this guy and not realizing what an asshole he was until, whereas in the ending that we got, she gets to grow up, she gets to move on from him, she by her own choice, and then at the end of that, we get to see Scott and Ramona go off, but not even necessarily to a happy ending, because the line is not like, okay, this is it, like let's go get married. Like that's not the sense I get at the end of this movie. Like the sense I get at the end of this movie is like, all right, I'm not done fucking up yet. If you're okay being with me, like you got to understand I'm not done fucking up yet. And that's both of them, and they're both just like, yeah, we understand, and they go off together just to see what's next, So like I feel like the groundwork for that is very well laid in this movie.
Yeah, I think that they could have gone either way, and I think that it's a lot of what you were talking about. They weren't sure how it was going to go, and the books themselves lean that way.
Yeah.
And I imagine that they were probably shitting themselves when the fifth book drops, and they read what the fifth book is about, and it's all about Kim being a potential landing spot for Scott, and then like she's like Allison Pill is like the 9th build person in this film.
I know.
And she has so much more screen time than, say, Chris Evans, Anna Kendrick, Brie Larson, all people who are, credited before her. And I'm like, well, that's strange to me, considering that, like, she's in almost every scene that Scott's in some way, shape, or form. But to give her, like, 9th billing, she's essentially an elevated extra. And it's just, it just feels so weird. You had mentioned something. Okay, so you went and saw a test screening, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you, at the time, I'm asking you to travel back, I guess, 10 and a half years to ask, do you know what 10 and a half years ago Sejin felt about the end of the film? Did you find it satisfying? Did you enjoy that ending?
Yeah, it didn't it didn't even really kind of occur to me that it was supposed to end another way until when the movie finally came out and other people saw it and started talking about it. So like this, even now, this feeling of like maybe he wasn't supposed to end up with her, is not even like one of my own. Like it's just one where like it's kind of in the water now. So now I can't not like think about it as I see it. It's the whole like, was Luke supposed to end up with Leia, and then at the last minute they changed the story, right? Because there's no fucking indication in that first movie that they're related, and you have to wonder whether or not Lucas was was thinking of that or not. I mean, infamously, the dude throws things in at the last minute and then claims he was thinking of it the whole time. Bullshit. So like, it's that same sensibility of just like, man, like if I hadn't known it, I never would have thought it, but now that I know it, I can't stop thinking it. So yeah, like I said, I love the ending of this movie. I really think it's a really interesting, like interesting move where they are both shitty people, right? And they
Mm-hmm.
both kind of prove themselves to be shitty time and time again until finally Scott gets the moment to grow up. Ramona never really gets that chance because she is kind of just a fucking prop by the end of this movie. And like there's a lot going on there, right? And so this idea that the ending is kind of unsettled is actually much more my taste, my speed, for so many reasons, but not least of which because the fact that the movie doesn't really give a full arc to Ramona, because Scott has only just started to become a decent human being, that like I don't want them to suddenly just be okay. As much as you talk about the idea of like the Hollywood morality of this movie, it definitely defies a Hollywood ending. Like, so I really like that.
Yeah, it well, at the end, what I wrote down as a moral, I wrote a much worse moral like halfway through the film, but the big moral of this story, as far as I'm concerned, as presented by this film, is that everyone has a past, and like loving someone is understanding that that person has a past, and
Hmm.
like being accepting of it and helping them maybe work through it. And
Yeah.
that's a big swing, and that's what it is. I mean, that's what storytelling is. You make the past 7 evil exes that you need to battle, because and you make it, visual, and he is literally doing fisticuffs with these evil exes, when really, like Ramona, her whole speech about I was kind of a bitch back then, right before Roxy attacks at the after party. Like, first of
Right.
all, I wrote down, why were you a bitch? Like, you were in high school, you were dating guys. By all accounts, like, you liked this guy and then you lost interest, which is
Yeah.
kind of what
Yeah.
kids do.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I
and
mean it's like take the first. I mean, take Patel for
yeah,
like her first boyfriend that is counted as a boyfriend. She doesn't even consider him that. She talks about how they spent some time together because they just wanted to be like fucking punks together. She kissed him once and then realized she didn't want to be with him and left him. And he counts himself as her first boyfriend. And there's a lot of actually kind of backhanded comments by Ramona this whole time. So it's not so much that you do get a lot about her character. It's just much more subtle and in the background, which is not fair, to be honest.
right.
But like you hear a lot of comments about how she's not happy with this setup. She wants Scott to not even bother. Like she talks about ignoring the exes and just like don't get involved. Don't you don't have to do this. There's a lot of these like weird moments where she's just like this isn't something I want you to do. So there's this whole thing about how she has this past that Scott can't ignore, which is a huge thing. Like that is a common trope in these types of stories where the guy cannot get over the fact that the girl has had other women, well, one other
Well,
woman,
one of the
but
women,
other men
yes,
is
but
what I meant. But like other partners, right? Like the idea that he can't get over the fact that she's had other partners before him, the fact that he is so focused on that instead of being in the relationship with her now. She is not happy nor comfortable nor wants him to be like that. That's what the whole fight at the bar is afterwards, right? After the fight with
Roxy,
Roxy,
yeah.
is that she's like, this is like, you're so focused on this, and this isn't even me. Like this is other people in my life that are like this, and she has no power or control over that, and that's all that Scott is focused on. And so like there is like this really interesting like story here about Scott needing to learn to just fucking grow up and get over it, right? And it's very, very bizarrely told through this anime style of like climbing the tower of supervillains, right?
Yeah, it's and that's the thing, is that like it's a very interesting story. I mean, it's something that like I've experienced it with people being like, "Oh, that's your ex," and I'm okay that you were with someone before, like, cuz I get it, cuz that's what life is. And nobody gets to be Christopher Columbus, because all of us are exploring, and everything is being discovered all the time in the world of sexuality.
Yeah.
I'm mixing a whole bunch of metaphors there, but it's one of those situations. But one of the weird things about this is, yes, it's obviously a metaphor, it's obviously symbolism, but the difficult thing for Scott, right, is that Ramona is not immediately upfront about these boyfriends. She's always cagey about it. So like there's this thing where like maybe if we just had a discussion about these situations, like, you know, I once dated a guy in this, and you know, this is how it felt about it, like, but you don't need to be that. It's all about communication, right? Communication
Right.
is the one thing that all entertainment is lacking, because a lack of communication would mean that there's never any conflict.
Sure, but like this is not a question that's going to have an answer. So like
Right.
I'm not throwing this at you as like to demand you solve this puzzle for me. But like doesn't Ramona deserve a sense of privacy, especially for a dude that she just met that is kind of creepy with her when they first
Oh,
meet, right? Like all in all, this story takes place over what, 3 days?
no.
I guess no. There is stretches of weeks in between the band shows. I forgot about that.
Well, at
But like there
least,
is
yeah, sorry, it's at least 6 weeks is
right.
where everybody comes down to. The movie is a year, so that's the other thing though, is that you need to understand that certain beats, like the beat where he's frustrated after the Roxy thing,
Hmm.
it like in the books that is after like 7 months of them being together.
Yeah.
So like you're dropping it on a character who's known her for at that point 4 weeks.
Yeah. No,
And
yeah,
yeah,
it's just it rides a really dangerous line because as is the case with this trope, it really it starts to look like slut shaming after a while, right? Like this idea that she was not allowed to have other partners before him, that she was not allowed to have this life, that she's not allowed to have privacy about that life. You know, like let's talk about the fact that she was with Roxy, right? And she talks about that for her it was just exploration. She didn't know what she wanted, and once she was with Roxy, she realized it wasn't that, right? Whereas for Roxy, we learn like it was meant so much more to her than that, and that is a story in this world. Like that is something that does happen to people out there, right? And if she never wants to talk about that again with anybody because she's not comfortable with it, or if she doesn't want to talk with like a guy that she's only been with for 7 months or whatever, like that's her prerogative, right? Like doesn't she have that right to not have to tell that story?
yes,
It's
she
it's
does.
just
Like I don't
it's a
want
weird
I know I
yeah,
don't want
it's
to come across as anything like that. But the issue is, and because it's all within the storytelling. In the real world, yes, you have a right to privacy, but
right.
in this film and in this world, her past is actively seeking out to destroy her potential future.
Right.
So like, so even in the real world, right? Like, yes, you should have that privacy. You should have the ability to not tell me or share with me anything about your past that you don't want to share, and I will trumpet that right from the rooftops. However, if let's I'm out with a hypothetical girl, right? It doesn't matter how long we've been together, and we run into her ex-girlfriend. I might want to have a discussion about what that was about. Like, oh, there was some that was kind of charged. Do you want to talk about what just happened? And like again, privacy, you have right to refusal, but like it's not a wrong feeling when you're like confronted with your past to be like,
Yeah.
oh, I'd like to know more. And maybe like obviously you still have some things that you feel about this. It's about also being able to rely on your partner to know that even though it's something that you might be ashamed of or not super happy about, I'm here with you now, and like you should be able to rely on other people. You shouldn't have to shoulder that burden alone.
I understand all of that, but knowing what we know about Scott in the early
That's
parts of
not what
this
he wants to
movie,
do. I get that. It's
It's,
all
it's like,
he's all
do
holding
you think
Caulfield.
anybody would
I
do
agree.
you
No,
think anybody would want to give him that? You
no.
know what I mean? Like there's so I think there's also that aspect to it too, is that it's not that either of them is wrong in these conversations, these fights, these issues that they're having. It's entirely about the way that they handle them. So and that comes to a head in the final fight with Gideon. It's not that he is not meant to fight Gideon. It's that his reasons for doing it, the context in which he approaches the issue, needs to change. The end of this movie is not him realizing that he shouldn't fight. It's that he needs to learn to fight the right way for the right reasons,
Right.
right? Right. So like that's the issue, is that yes, okay, maybe this conversation should have happened, and there was an opportunity clearly for that when Scott gets the email from Patel in the beginning. that he chooses to ignore. And it is from that moment on that none of the action can be, I feel like, can be really placed on Ramona. Because at that point, he had the ability to do what was right, and he fucks up that train. And everybody else is just dealing with the crash afterwards. And like, so everything past that point of him just refusing to understand what's going on, even after when he has the fight with Patel, he never sits down and talks to her about it. All of this time that we're learning about, like, why is it not more in his interest to sit down and be like, tell me what's going to happen next? Like let's talk about this and talk about what the fuck is happening. That never happens for Scott. It just never occurs to him.
Thank you.
Because he's so self-absorbed.
Thank you. I need to say thank you before I forget to say thank you. Because my initial thought when you're like, he ignores the warning signs, right? Which is another symbolic gesture of, oh, I'm getting some red flags, but I'm going to keep marching forward, right? A literal email from someone saying, we're going to fight and I'm going to try to kill you. That's a big old red flag.
Right.
That's a big old red flag. Then my initial thought was, well, Ramona knew, and the only way that she communicated it was with the 7X's underneath her phone number. But like, it's just like, oh, what fun movie storytelling that like she gave you a clue about it, Scott. What do you think these were? And I don't know. It's just this film that is nothing but symbols and metaphors fucks that up so hard in like pursuit of the joke.
Yeah.
So many times. Like, you say you don't think this movie tries hard, like it's not a try hard. I think this movie is all the time trying. This film felt like it was trying so hard to be like this cool video game thing, and I'm just like, this is exhausting. This is exhausting to me. And that's like as a younger person, I ate it up, but now as a 34-year-old, I'm like, this is a little much, right? And that felt strange. I never even considered that was going to be one of the sticking points for me.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, this is not. I guess what it comes down to is like, this isn't Blue Valentine. This isn't the movie that I came to for like a deep exploration of relationships. You know what I mean? Like part of it is that aspect of, it is a movie, and the reason that it is a movie that resonates and sticks with people, that people still watch, and that, I mean, we're talking about it 10 years later, not just because we want to. They legitimately, like, I don't know if COVID's going to change this or not, but we're talking about re-releasing it this year. They are going to do a script reading of it with as many people from the original cast as they could. And this is just the movie. Like, we can't ignore that the comics have led. I know people that have gotten straight up tattoos based on like Ramona Flowers' hair, like that kind of shit.
Yeah,
it is a movie that it is a story all the way around that impacts people, and like, it can be exhausting to you now as an adult, but if anything, all that says to me is you've moved on from this movie, but this movie's not done yet. You know what I mean? And like, and I don't know if writing it off as just like exhausting is fair, because there's a lot going on in this movie that is still kind of culturally relevant, you know, for all of the shit that this movie does with video games and you know, toxic masculinity. It's not the kind of toxic masculinity that we talk about with gamers. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a bunch of dudes sitting around talking about like how women can't be strong. We actually straight up get to see a pretty fucking badass fight between Ramona and Roxy. On top of that, knives at the end of this movie coming around and being such a great compliment to Scott's fighting style in the final moments. Like, we get to see that kind of stuff, right? And like, you know, a few moments of that stuff doesn't forgive a complete absence of just there should be a female version of Scott, right? But like, there's a sense in this movie of, there's a sense of love and caring in this movie for not just the people within the movie, but for the people watching it as well, that like it touches people. It grabs people and it holds them very, very kindly. And like, and I think that's what's going to make this movie stick around for another. I mean, we're going to be in 15 years. There will be a 25th anniversary of this. I guarantee it.
And I don't disagree with that statement at all. But I think what I have learned from exploring it 10 years out is that this film never really worked for me. Just like, because my thoughts about the movie after I saw the movie was, that was a pretty enjoyable little film. I didn't like the ending. And my feelings after reading through the 6 books was, that was a pretty enjoyable journey. I'm not sad that I went on it, but I didn't like the ending.
How about that video game, that side-scrolling beat 'em up?
I mean, I'll play that every day. I love the Scott Pilgrim video game, but the ending of that is so fucking absurd. It's to this level of absurdity that is incredible to me, because at the end, when you beat that game as Scott becomes an anime harem character. And Kim and Knives and Ramona are all dating him. I even think they throw Julie into that mix too. Like, it's this crazy thing where, like, oh, okay, like, you took it to this absurd level of, like, the type of person who is willing to do this, this is the reward that they're looking for. The video game is the most satisfying that I find this story, but even then, like, I find it satisfying as a video game. I don't necessarily find it satisfying as this deep exploration of what the story I feel was trying to do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I don't know. I mean, and yeah, just because I said it was exhausting, that doesn't change the fact that I'm not upset that I rewatched this film. I definitely think that people are going to come to this movie and hopefully they take away the proper lessons from it. The big fear that I have is one that Dale brought up when we were watching Clerks last year. And she's like, people watched this movie and they decided to glamorize the wrong messages in this. Dante should not be, a hero figure. He should be a tragic figure. And so far with Scott Pilgrim, I don't think anybody is like, I have to live my life like Scott Pilgrim. And in fact, in my notes, I wrote, pretty sure my life goal is to not be Scott Pilgrim. And I would say I am succeeding.
I would say to that, I mean, to use an overused word, audiences in 2010 to now are much more woke than audiences in the early 90s. You know what I mean? Like audiences are getting better. Even younger audiences are getting better at recognizing when the douchebag on screen is not the guy to emulate. Like that is definitely not true across the board. We can definitely point to other stuff, but it's movies have had that problem forever, man. I mean, like I literally just watched a video the other day. I'm give a shout out to Polygon for an awesome video on the video games based on movie posters you had when you were in college. And the entire point of the video is talking about movies like The Godfather and Scarface, and about how when people in college watch those movies, they watch them thinking, wouldn't it be cool to be fucking Don Corleone? Wouldn't it be cool to be Scarface? Like, no, the whole point of The Sopranos, wouldn't it be cool to fucking be this, like, the head of the Soprano family? No, man. The whole point of those shows, the whole point of those movies is to show you the tragedy of their lives. But that's not what people latch onto. So, like, you can be worried about that. You should be worried about that. And the way that you combat that is you do things like we're doing. We talk about what the movie is trying to really tell you in the way that these characters act. Because, like, there's always going to be that guy that reads the room wrong. That's just going to be the case. You're always going to have that audience member that emulates the wrong character in the film. There are dudes out there that watch Fight Club and think, man, that Tyler Durden was one stand-up fellow, right? Like, like he was the most real one in the whole movie. But like, there's this sense that can be the way that other people feel about that. At some point, you got to stop caring so much about that, or if you do care about it, you can't hold that against the movie, and that's one of the biggest issues that I have with that kind of take on Clerks, or with that take on Scott, is like, yes, other people out there might see this character and try and emulate them in some way, but that's not the character's fault. Like,
no, I personally do not hold that against either Clerks or Scott Pilgrim. But it was just a thought that went through my head, seeing how different my sister's reaction to the film Clerks was than mine, right? Yeah. Like, the things that I took from that is that, like, you can be happy doing this, right? Like, the Randall character, sure, he's a jerk, but he's pretty much happy in just living a menial existence. He doesn't need to be a king or rich. He's happy just being able to have a job that he can go to, watch videos, and hang out with the people that he loves. And, like, that's a pretty solid message, right? Is that, like, find what makes you happy and you don't have to like hew to the ideals of happiness that society feeds you, right?
Beautifully complicated in Clerks 2 by the speech he gives when they're in prison, where he finally breaks and talks about how he does in fact hate his miserable life, but he doesn't wear it on his sleeve like Dante does, because that would just he'd rather kill himself.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
is actually the way that he
It's
puts
like
it.
I'd rather
Yeah,
smile than fucking be miserable.
yeah,
You're,
right, right.
yeah, and that's why like that's this thing. But I can totally see someone looking at that and taking it the wrong way, and that's fine because
Yeah.
everything, like you said, has that potential to be misinterpreted. And I guess the fear for me, because I am someone who admittedly never connected with the Scott Pilgrim franchise on that level that I saw other people connect with it, I
Mhm.
think that the reason why I had that disconnect was like, really, I just like, I view this as a cautionary tale. And I can say now, that's not the best thing to do. Writing it off as a cautionary tale when I initially saw it, not the best thing to do. Because there are actually some really profound adult lessons on display. Being
Mhm.
accepting of your partner's history and privacy, those are things that, you know, make sense and that you should try to emulate. Um, but and I feel like the ending now, right? As much as the Knives ending is, it seems like it would be the one that makes sense, especially in that whole final scene where like he said what he says to Knives about like, I cheated on you, I just want to be honest, but you don't need to fight her, and all that other like that whole speech that he has to her. I understand now why the ending was, and he and Knives walk off together.
Mhm.
But and then the Ramona one, I'm like, that it doesn't feel like the movie supported that. But what the movie is saying is that they've realized that both of them are the worst on some level, but they're okay with that. And they're hopeful that now that they've acknowledged that, they can continue on in a healthy relationship. Or at least their reasonable facsimile of what that means in their world.
Yeah, I mean, in really raw terms, Knives deserves better than Scott at the end of that movie. By
Yeah.
the end of that movie, Knives grows up to a point faster than Scott ever did and earlier than Scott ever did, and deserves better than him still.
Yeah.
And so, like, not being with him is actually, I think, I am happier for Knives knowing that she is not stuck with Scott, and I am happy that Ramona and Scott find somebody that can tolerate their growing up, because they still have a lot to do.
Right. And I think, like, at the end of the day, Scott winding up with nobody, which is the third ending and the ending that I think I'm always expecting whenever I'm, like, interacting with one of these, is that, like, no, you learned a lesson, but you don't also get the girl, right? You don't also get a prize from learning the lesson of, well, I need to be more adult. I need to realize this stuff about people. Like, but you don't also get the girl that you've literally objectified this whole time as a consolation prize. The
Mm.
prize is the knowledge that you've earned. Does that make sense? That
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I
yeah. The
like
lessons that we learned along the way. Yeah, no, I, I could definitely appreciate that, but I think that comes back to what we were saying about the likes of like Edgar Wright and Brian Lee O'Malley. Like, the kinds of stories they want to tell don't end that way, and so, and that's not an excuse. Like that's just a reason why I think we don't see that, is because I just don't think that would have played with their type of storytelling. Look at the end of something like everything that you're saying about Scott and your feelings about him as a character, and whether or not you feel like he grows up and he's kind of the worst person. These are all the same feelings that I have about Shaun and Shaun of the Dead. You know what I mean? Like these are
yeah,
all the same feelings I have about what's Peg's character name on Spaced. Like, and actually both of them on
Tim,
Spaced. They're kind of Scott and Ramona in that story. like they really are.
yeah,
But there's
Tim and
there
Daisy are just
yeah, Tim and
say
Daisy.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean, like, honestly, if you told me that a lot of Spaced influenced a lot of Scott Pilgrim, and then Scott Pilgrim ended up influencing a lot of what Edgar Wright now does, like, it's just the horse eating itself. That's not the saying, but I love it
snakes
anyway.
eat themselves.
But I know. But
Apis
the idea
bena.
that uh, but like that idea, right? Uh, the other thing that that we really didn't talk about, and I'm surprised, is also kind of the environment of entertainment at that time, which we have talked about before, of mean comedy that like was ripe in 2010. So like one of the big things that I actually really liked about Scott Pilgrim then, that doesn't quite work now, is it's mean comedy with a heart, which was kind of new. You didn't really have that breakthrough yet. We were talking about like the height of the popularity of The Office and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Where like that kind of like everybody in this ensemble just sucks, but we love them anyway, is like that is the world that we were in, right? So this movie lives in that world, but then also kind of does actually give a lot of heart to a lot of these different characters in different moments and in different ways. Like the whole thing at the end with young Neil where he hands the bass off to him and stuff like that. Like I actually was very proud of young Neil at the end of this movie, despite the fact that this is a kid that like had all of like 10 lines throughout the rest of the movie. But it succeeds in that realm of kind of breaking through that wall of mean comedy that was so present at the time, but in retrospect still is firmly trapped in that marker of that era, right?
Oh yeah, like the whole character of Julie. First of all, I should have said this an hour ago. This should have been the opening statement of Scott Pilgrim. Scott Pilgrim should have been R-rated. There's no reason that this is a PG-13 movie.
I don't know. I mean, like,
it feels.
I don't know. Like Scott Pilgrim feels like a character that like 14-year-olds really loved. No, I think the target audience for this movie is like 13 and 14-year-olds. Even when I saw it and I was 18, 19 at the time, like I felt like this is not even for me like anymore, right? Like it's weird because whereas like the story that it's telling is very much one that I connected with at the time and in retrospect was like at the exact right age to hear that story, I don't feel like it was ever geared towards me. I don't know, because if you're about to talk about Julie and her swearing, like I think the joke goes out the window if it's an R-rated movie and she's allowed to just swear.
Right, but okay, so but it's also the fact that it's Edgar Wright. It's the fact that Edgar Wright is the director. This film for Edgar Wright is Quentin Tarantino doing Jackie Brown, and it's Kevin Smith doing Mallrats. And I think there's a big reason why he was showing this film to Quentin Tarantino and Kevin Smith for their approval in the creation process. Because, apparently your third movie should be an adaptation. And another thing that really speaks to that is that in the special thanks section, there is no mention of anybody from England. Like Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, they do not get thank yous in the special thanks section. It's like they all decided we're going to go off and do our own things. And that's kind of cool.
They went and made Paul, he made this.
Yeah. And I think I like Paul better, I'll be honest with you, but that's just me.
That's something we'll have to revisit
Yeah,
someday.
God,
anyway.
we're going to have to watch Paul. But yeah, it's just this is like weird thing where like, okay, so this is I'm stepping out on my own. And the weird thing about like that is that he's doing the studio film, really. Like, this is a Universal picture. It's not an independent one that he's working on with money from the British government to make his movie. So because you're existing in a studio system, they want to market it to that PG-13 lucrative area of the cinema-going public in America. That was a lot of words, and I'm very sorry. I could have said that much better. But it just seems so strange that, like, this film that is about fighting, like, I don't know. It just, it was that swearing thing, and I'm like, you know what wouldn't happen? That wouldn't be a joke. Because I just find that exhausting. That whole scene is exhausting to me. And I love Aubrey Plaza in this film, and I love the character of Julie.
It's also not just one scene. Like, that's her character. Like, that is her character in this movie. It happens in at least 3 scenes.
Yeah, but it doesn't happen until he runs into her at the coffee shop looking for his sister. It's not established before that scene. And it's just like, what? It hit me so weird. And I'm just like, man, you know what I like about the other Edgar Wright movies up to this point? Is the hyper violence that like is almost laughable in its absurdity. Does that make sense? I don't know. I feel like
Well, yeah, but the two movies he made before this were Shaun of the Dead, a zombie horror film that, like, like it's a comedy, but like it's based in the zombie horror genre,
Yeah.
and then Hot Fuzz, which is based on the masculine, the machismo action movie, another R-rated genre. Like, you want to talk about like what genre he's playing with in this one? It is anime, and
Yep.
what does anime sell to?
It
Like,
smells
you're
to
talking
kids.
about like it is so perfectly seated in what it is trying to do. Like it feels like this is just a matter of this thing was just not meant for you as
It
an
wasn't
audience
meant for me.
member.
That's it. Like Netflix said, I had a 61% match, and I'm like, that sounds right. That's less than a D. It just, I don't know. I don't know. I was excited to rewatch this movie, and unfortunately, it just didn't work for me. And I think it doesn't work for me, and like the fact that there's so much of the first book in this, and then all the other ones are like so condensed down. Like, you barely get to take a breather between the Todd fight to the Roxy fight to the Katanagi twins. Like, it's so like that. And I mean, let's also talk about the fact that he gets the extra life right after the Katanagi fight. So like, when he dies, spoilers for Scott Pilgrim versus the World, I never think that he's dead for real.
I mean, narrative structure would tell you he's not dead for real too. But yeah, okay, like
It's not, it's not one of those moments like, oh my god, Scott failed, and then this like funny thing happens where I got an extra life in the books. And I know that we said we weren't going to talk about the books, but like, I think so much of my issues with this as a film stems from the fact that the books exist, and that because they had 6 volumes to tell the story, they get to explore things that are important to making me care about this character. Like, it's not this condensed Cliff Notes version. Like the fact that he gets that extra life after his fight with Todd is very interesting to me. And I had forgotten about it reading the books when he died in 6. And I'm like, oh, I guess that's it, right? You weren't understanding, and your actions have consequences. And here, it's your death. She kept telling you not to fight against her past and just accept it, and you died. And,
well, so in the movie, it's after the Katanagi twins, right? Because
yeah,
it's when he gets all the extra points in the Katanagi twins, and the line is "you got a life," right? And it happens right after he realizes like he's not going to get stepped on anymore. It is kind of the moment where he realizes he needs to start growing up. He doesn't finish for another 20 minutes, but in the movie, but like, so for me, I always forget about the extra life. Like, that's, I know he's not dead when he dies. I just forget that that's like the thing that brings it, like that's the MacGuffin. like I just all I think of in that moment when he gets the life is that's just the joke when he finally realizes, like, climactically he needs to start growing up. Is like, hey, Ray, you got a life, like good for you. Like, and then narratively it comes back and I'm like, oh, that's good. Like that's good story structure. I should have realized that was what's going to happen. I never think about that until it happens.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I'm like, it was 3 books ago. And speaking of the video game, which I admittedly, bigger part of me regarding the Scott Pilgrim universe, when you beat Todd, you get an extra life. It's the only boss fight that you're awarded an extra life. And like, so I remember it. It sticks in my head. And I think that the Katanagi fight, like, you're right. It is when he decides, I need to grow up, right? And he stands up and we're like, we're going to defeat these guys because I want our band to succeed. I like what we're doing. And we're not going to be told no by those idiots across the way. Like, right. It's great. But that fight is not super satisfying because it's him and other people. But I guess narratively, like, he's supposed to be learning that he can rely on other people besides himself in order to deal with the problems in the world.
Yeah, it's the first time that he's actually a member of the band. The entire rest of the movie, he's constantly letting them down. He's either walking out of their rehearsals in the middle of rehearsal, or he's showing up late for shows, or he's taking over on stage. He's constantly not being a member of the band. He's constantly just being a selfish asshole. It's the first time you see him stop being selfish, which is like the first step towards Scott not being a complete ass by the end of the movie.
Yeah, I guess, thank you. This is good. This has been very good because it's making me realize that there's a lot more on display in this film that I'm probably not going to watch for 15 more years when we're recording something for the 25th anniversary. Imagine if we were still podcasting. Then I'd like to think we're going to be. At least I
future
am,
us's.
right? Hey, future us's. If you got Bill and Ted technology, this is the time to come back to.
No, it's not.
Are they
no,
there?
It's not.
Are they there?
Stay away from 20.
No,
Stay
not
away from
2020. That'd be bad. But it would they could just show up in their little phone booth and then leave. Like, just to let us
if and
know.
when they develop time travel, that is going to be like one of the rules, right? Like one of the top 10 rules is we don't go back to 2020. We just don't.
No, we can go back to 2010 and see Scott Pilgrim in theaters that way. Yeah, I guess there's a nuance there that I just miss because let's talk about the big issue for this movie with me is that I am not invested until Under My Thumb plays by the Rolling Stones. The last 20 minutes of this film, I am fucking in. I think that is, like, it's so good. It feels the most like the game and the books. It's just like, and that song, that choice right there, which it's crazy to me that in the IMDb trivia, it's listed as the song that plays during the scene is Under My Thumb by the Rolling Stones. Because I was sitting there and I heard it and I'm like, what a perfect sound design choice. What a perfect sound design choice in this moment. And it's like, it's the first time that this film really connects for me. And after this discussion, do you know why, Devin? Because Scott Pilgrim's finally acting like a goddamn adult. And up to this point, you're like, I really am over this kid stuff. God, this has been a journey for me, Sejan.
Yeah, I mean, you're as fed up with Scott as everybody else in the movie is with him. I mean, even Wallace, as much as Wallace loves him, and we have not given enough credit to
Kieran Culkin's
it's not. I was going
performance.
to say Macaulay Culkin, but it's not. It's the other Culkin.
The superior Culkin? Am I wrong in saying that?
Nowadays, I don't know. Macaulay Culkin's been pretty rad online and does like a bunch of self-aware Twitter shit. But anyway, but like Wallace, even as much as Wallace loves him, Wallace, like the entire thing is like, it's time for you to move out. Like I love you, man, but you cannot stay sleeping in the same bed as me and my boyfriend and our others.
Me and my boyfriends.
To be fair, there's only one that I think he labels as boyfriend the whole time. They just have a rotating cast of
you
thirdsies.
Don't know that. There's a time where Jimmy is there with other Scott, and then a third. He could be polyamorous. We don't know Wallace's life.
No, but but even in polyamory, there's a one label that he uses for one particular person.
True, that's true. I don't know. It's
but there's But yeah, no, so even the person that we are led to believe really kind of cares about him the most this entire time, take that for what you will, considering the way he treats him. Like he is actively saying to him, like, you need to get out of my life, and at least a little bit. Like there's a sense that like, it's that thing that we run into all the time where an artist really wants you to feel a certain way about a character, and you feel it, and you somehow take that to mean that you're not enjoying yourself. And you're fine to feel that way, but all the feelings you have about Scott up to that moment are exactly what you're supposed to feel about Scott up until that moment.
Apparently, yes.
If that's not entertaining to you, like that's totally fair. But like, that's exactly how you're supposed to feel about Scott up until that moment.
So what Scott Pilgrim versus the World represents for me, and this is a fucking gross thing that I'm about to say, and Don Henley, don't sue us, is the end of innocence. It is this moment in my life, the year 2010, reading the 6 books in the series, playing the video game, and then ultimately seeing this movie. It represented my innocence, like, when I crossed that line and was like, this is not the type of story that I want to live anymore. I am not... What?
How old were you?
24.
Oh, look at that. According to this movie, about exactly the right age for that conversation to be happening.
Yeah, no, and let's talk about fucking growing up. I'm fucking alone on the ocean, removed from family and friends for like the first time in my life. Like, and I guess now the reason why I hold animosity towards Scott Pilgrim versus the World is that rather than seeing it as this like weird Flying Dutchman. I can't think of the guy. The guy on the River Styx.
The
The uh,
the Flying Dutchman. I
the,
have no idea where you're going with this metaphor.
the ferryman. The ferryman is the word I was looking for. Rather than watching this movie as seeing this movie as the ferryman that helped me to become an adult and the person that I am today, I view this as a reminder of what I used to idolize and hope for, and and I get pissed at that because I, just like everyone in this movie, have a past, and this film, more than anything else in my life, represents that past. And I'm looking through my notes right now. It is nothing but like, man, remember when we used to go to toilets for punk shows? NES, that's pretty punk rock. Guy backstage at the Battle of the Bands. Like all these fucking nostalgic moments from my past. This turned into therapy for me. Not the intention. Apologies to the listeners who didn't tune in for tossed salads and scrambled eggs this week. But Jesus.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, and that's just it. I mean, like, anybody that wants to know how we both view these sorts of things, like, go listen to our Hamilton breakdown. At the end of the day, I don't disagree with anything about what you're saying about what this movie does. It's just that's exactly why I enjoy it. Like, all of this stuff that it captures and encapsulates, and the stories that it's telling, and the moral that it's trying to impart, like, all of that is the kind of stuff that, like, I still eat up. That hasn't changed for me. And I don't know, maybe there will be a point. Maybe in my 50s I will come back and watch this movie and they like be like, oh, we were stupid back then. I don't want to think about that. Like, maybe that's where I'll be, but I'm not there yet. Like watching this and remembering what we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, depending on how it's relating to you, because fuck me, there was definitely moments in this movie where I was like, I hate Scott because I relate to him too much. But like there's a sense of capturing something, and it's not pretty. It's definitely ugly, but I think that is the point. And there's a reason why it's wrapped up in 8-bit video games and punk rock, is because, like, those are, again, things that are not pretty, but like have a beauty to them that we still hold up, that we still try to emulate, that we still try to recreate, you know?
Emulate there, talking about 8-bit graphics, that was on point. I'm patting you on the back for it. I'm sorry that I didn't just let it exist, but that was super great. And I'm feeling I have a really weird energy right now, because it is just because this film hit and encapsulated exactly what I was going through when it came into my life. And that I had never considered that before right now. And like, there's other stuff. I don't know. I don't know how to feel. I just know that a certain someone that we both know changed her profile pic to her in the style of a Scott Pilgrim character. And like, that stuck with me watching this whole movie. That like, oh, she was sort of that for me. And I'm not going to, there's no reason to give her name, but maybe you know who I'm talking about. Maybe you don't. It'll be an off-mic discussion afterwards. But yeah, wow. I feel real good. I feel like a weight has lifted from me. This cast is fucking incredible. Let's talk about some of the things that are really good in this movie.
I mean, the cast is awesome. The effects are still badass. The fights are still super well choreographed. The music is another level, which it always is with Edgar Wright. Yeah. I mean, look at Baby Driver. But like, it's too good of a package that even with all of the ugliness that's in it, and again, I think it's very purposeful ugliness. I still think people should watch it.
I just grew three sizes this day.
No, and it's the kind of thing nowadays that, like, you can't watch a movie and not break it down. Like, we used to do it as nerds. Like, this is nothing new, like sitting around and breaking down a movie into its pieces for Devin and I. But like, it seems like if you really want to watch movies nowadays, you kind of have to do this. And like, maybe you don't. Maybe you're the kind of person that can watch a movie and get away with it, and man, I envy you. But I can't help but like do this kind of shit with movies all the time. So I'm not saying don't do that with Scott Pilgrim. It's not the kind of thing where I'm like, ignore your feelings, just enjoy yourself. That's bullshit. But what I'm saying is, don't be afraid to enjoy this movie, because there is a lot there worth enjoying.
Yeah, it's that's actually a really positive message. And I will say, I like to think that I have trained myself to be of two Devons. And a Devon who can just watch things for entertainment purposes, and that Devon who analyzes things. And I definitely put myself into that analysis seat. And what I'm finding is that when I'm analytical of the things that I find entertaining, I have a lot of problems with it. And like it
Yeah,
not
man.
like not that I want that to be my my freaking arc for 2020, but like all this stuff that as like a younger person I just watched for pure enjoyment, like watching it more analytically, I'm learning a lot about myself that I wasn't expecting.
I
And
think we could say that about a lot of people right now, and there's a
yeah,
reason why there's a lot of people that are getting real angry when people start to analyze their shit is because they kind of get a little upset at how true those analytics can be. And it would like we don't need to go into that, but like that's I think that's the source of a lot of people's issue right now with the way that culture is treated, and they don't like it not because it's not fair.
yeah, it's you don't want a spotlight shown into some places.
Hmm.
Whew, jeez, I feel a cathartic release. I feel real good. I still love Dracula 2000. I'm glad that one survived. And mostly because of just how different it was from everything else that I had seen up to that point. And
Hmm.
I don't, oof. God, Scott Pilgrim, you represent a part of me that I left behind. And I'm sorry that I'm so hard on you for being reminded about that part of me I left behind. I'm apologizing to this movie.
Nah, man, no reason to apologize. That's the important thing. That's what I mean when I say like don't feel like don't feel like the sour grapes in the room if this is how you feel about these things, any of these things, because at the end of the day, like it's okay to not like shit, and I think that that's something that gets lost a lot of the time. And like I don't even want to start fucking breaking that idea down either, because then you start saying some really problematic shit there too. But like if you don't like something, that's fine. Don't like something, that's cool. And if you do love something, that's cool. Just both of y'all respect the fact that there's going to be people that feel different things out there, because this is the kind of movie that is going to breed that. I mean, I'll be honest. I showed this to my family, and there's a range between the three of us, right? There's me, who has watched this movie practically every year since it came out, and I fucking just love it and eat it up and still do. There's another person in this house that saw it when it came out, loved it then, and wasn't too sure about it this time as we watched it. And then there was somebody in this house that never seen it before, and she watched it and she powered through it like a fucking champ. But at the end of the day, I don't think she'd say that it was her favorite thing that we've watched lately, right? Like, and so I think that there's definitely an element of like controversy around this film, that it isn't going to be the Oscar winning, like pointed to best film Edgar Wright's ever made type thing, but it is going to stick around as a cult classic, and there's a reason why it's a cult classic.
Yeah, there's definitely a reason why this connects with the zeitgeist at the time and is still celebrated and something worth being looked back at. Can I make a request right now?
Sure.
We said that we weren't going to get into the books, and I agree with that. Can I get 5 good minutes to delve into like some of the book stuff?
No, of course. Yeah.
Knives is done fucking dirty in this movie.
Hmm.
And like her character almost exists solely to be done dirty. Like, and that's kind of problematic to have someone that like, oh, the main character is basically going to shit on this person and not do it. But in the books, you get to see her growth to that badass that attacks Ramona in the Chaos Theater.
Hmm.
And like, it feels like it comes from nowhere. And she is such an important part of this story. The note I wrote is, Knives Chow deserved better than being DLC in the video game. Because she's not even playable in the game unless you
I
pay $5.
I don't disagree, man. Like I think all around, I think that there's a consensus, not just in between the two of us, but in even the fan base of this movie, that Knives has a pretty tragic and not in a fun way, like story, both on screen and off. Like the way that she's treated on the page and the way that she's treated in universe in this movie are all kind of shitty. You're not wrong, and to that point, I don't think that there's any woman in this movie that is really treated well, like all around. Like I think any female character in this movie kind of has they have a gripe, that a fair gripe that's with the way that they are treated and portrayed. But yeah, man, like I don't disagree with that at all.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that I had to get that out because like it's something that I felt the whole time. Ditto, like in the movie, Ramona, we're just told that she's bad and that she's not a good person. In the books, you actually get that whole exploration in a
Yeah,
way
you get
that,
some of the background story with the way that she treated some of the guys that is not stellar, but because of the fact that she is not more um, explored in the movie, it does kind of just make it even worse.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah, it's just, I'm like, she was actually a well rounded character, and you said we don't necessarily need a female Scott. She sort of represents that in the text in a way that I always kind of liked, in the fact that
Mhm.
these two people found each other and it's either the best thing for them or the absolute worst thing for them, because they found an echo chamber, and either hearing themselves made them realize I need to make some fucking changes in my life,
Yeah,
or it validates the way that they've been acting their entire life because here's another person who's doing that and done that.
that's a definite danger. Yeah, and that tension is super interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like they kind of touch on it briefly, and then they have to move on to the next fight. They don't get to, like, the fourth book is just a huge exploration of that. And I mean, it's kind of, I, of course, Chasing Amy, I care a lot about it. The fourth book is the one that focuses on Roxy. Like, it has a really good structure in the fact that the first is Matthew Patel, the second is Lucas Lee, the third is Todd Ingram, the fourth is Roxy, and the fifth, that's why they're twins,
Mhm.
so that the sixth book can be Gideon.
Yeah,
And like, so like, to actually get a fully realized story about it, you're more invested in when that fight actually comes, and you get to see it from the for lack of a better term, villain side, and like how they feel that they were slighted by Ramona, and like, but why should you get her, right? Like, this
right.
is what she's gonna do, and this is what she might do to you, and like, and it makes that symbolism like easier to see because it's Scott literally fighting against his insecurity,
Right.
as opposed to just I'm her ex.
Well, it's what makes the line at the end of that fight, which I think is directly out of the books. When him and Ramona have the fight at the bar after the fight with Roxy, the physical fight with Roxy,
Yeah,
she says to him, "You're just another ex waiting to happen,"
yeah.
and it's like, and that is fucking daggers. Like, and that's just in the movie. And like I said, I'm pretty sure that's one of the lines lifted straight from the books.
That's
And
how
like,
that's how the fourth book ends.
right,
Is
and
with that
it's
line.
just yeah, it's just fucking it's a gorgeous line because it perfectly sums up everything to that point and hits Scott in a way that like what are you gonna do with that? It's a great way for the book to end because then you're like, what do you we're gotta
Where
wait
does
months
he
for the next
come
one to come
from
out.
that?
Where does he go? Yeah, where does he
Yeah.
go next?
And then
Yeah,
that fifth book is the exploration of his relationship with Kim and what it means to be an ex to somebody else, to be another female's evil ex. And that's where Nega Scott actually exists. I hate Nega Scott in this. It feels so fucking tacked on because
Well,
he
it's just a
exists
joke
in the
in this.
books.
Yeah, it's a joke in the movie, a joke I like, but
Yeah.
like it's nothing more than that. Yeah.
Yeah, where like it's that insecurity that line breeds within Scott that he needs to get over so that he can have self-respect for himself. It's just the stuff that they omit takes away a lot of the emotional weight of this story.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sorry.
I no, like so I agree, but I think that that's where Edgar Wright succeeds is like that was always going to happen. It's a
Right.
2 hour version of six books, right? So in that, I think that Wright succeeds as somebody that is not nearly as in love with the books as you are. So like take this with a grain of salt. I think he succeeds in still creating an emotional like connection with characters and the universe of Scott Pilgrim in 2 hours that is that the payoff is worth it for me at the end for when things happen, like when he hands the band off to young Neil and like gives him basically his blessing to move on without the band, his blessing to move on without him, and like everything that happens between with him discovering self-respect over love and all of that shit. Like, I think that there isn't anything that happens at the end of the movie that feels hollow from the rest of the film. Like, the closest might be the Negascott thing, but as viewed as just a joke, it actually is a really good payoff from the first fight, from the Dance Dance Revolution moment in the beginning with knives. So like, there's within the universe of the movie itself, I think everything pays off perfectly fine emotionally. As somebody that's coming from the books, though, I can see how you can feel like it's missing something. But I feel like that's the same gripe every reader has ever had with the film adaptation. Right?
Everybody who's seen an adaptation. Como, who I haven't even mentioned Como, who is my favorite character in this film. Nelson Franklin, I mean, because of Nelson Franklin's appearance in Scott Pilgrim, I watched the show Traffic Light and have followed Nelson Franklin's career from that point forward. And if I hadn't watched Traffic Light, I wouldn't have found out Aya Cash, and I wouldn't have followed her career. Like, there's a lot of positive things from Scott Pilgrim that I have. And Nelson Franklin playing Como, who is what I think one of just the greatest characters. Like, if there's a character I'd want to emulate in the Scott Pilgrim universe, is Como. in just like, everybody. Oh yeah, that's Ramona Flowers. and he just like rattles everybody off all that information. It's like, that's the character that I connected with. I mean, even the first time I viewed it.
He has one of my favorite lines in the movie offhandedly when you first enter the Gideon's club at the end, into the Chaos Theater, and you hear him offhandedly saying to somebody, well, everybody knows that a band's first album is not their first album, like, right?
Oh, like, I actually wrote it down because, first of all, I was celebrating Cuomo because he's just the best, in my opinion. I understand that it's my opinion, but the exact quote is, the first album is much better than the first album.
Yeah.
Like,
it's such a great line.
Right. And that's what I was going to reference is when Scott comes back after his extra life, Cuomo's line is, the comic book is better than the movie. And he's right on both accounts. The first album is better than the first album. Let's just get that on the record.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it is one of those situations where he admits, like, that's Edgar Wright to me saying the comic book is better than the movie, but try to appreciate the movie for what the movie is, right? Like, I had to take 6 things and condense it into its own little world, and hopefully it worked for you. And
yeah, I mean, it's an acknowledgement that, like, this was never going to be that thing. It's its own thing.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it a lot of respect for Edgar Wright, like, taking on a project like this and, like, clearly embracing it. Like, this is one of the most Edgar Wright projects you'll ever see, and you can kind of say that about all of his movies, but there is so much of him in this, in the ways in which people are allowed to so naturally just be themselves in a lot of places. Even Chris Evans, for putting on like a dopey voice and all that, he's so natural.
Ben Stiller. He's Ben Stiller. He's White Whitman from Dodgeball. Because I had to pause it and be like, he's playing a character. Who is he playing? And it's like, it's White. That's actually hilarious.
Yeah. But like he so beautifully falls into it. It doesn't feel. It's another moment where I have to say, like, it doesn't feel forced for me when this shit happens. You can see that, like, there was probably some improv going on off screen to get into character. You know what I mean? Like, not that I feel like they were improvising jokes. It wasn't like a Judd Apatow movie, but like, I feel like there was definitely moments where they were talking to each other in character, and then he was like, "All right, here we go. Like, let's get into this now."
So I think where it stems from where I say it was trying hard, now that I've lifted the weight and I've ascended, I've defeated Cecil's dark form, and now I am a paladin. That's right, I made myself a paladin, bitches. Is that the game references come so fast and furious that it doesn't, like, the beautiful thing about the books, and again, I'm still on book time, right? You can't get mad at me for making a book reference, right? I just want to make sure.
Of course. No. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll allow it.
Is the fact that it just sort of exists. Like, the video games are not the big focal point of it. They're just one aspect of who Scott is. Like, he's obviously still someone who plays video games, but like, there's a lot of music references in the book. Like, come on, Stephen Stills and Young Neil. That's Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and and it doesn't. I don't know. I just feel like
I feel like the music stuff is in the movie too, though, man. And this is coming from a place of somebody that like bought the album back in 2010, and it's one of the few albums I still own. You know, like physical albums I still own. I actually, as soon as this movie was over, started like looking up ways to get like the vinyl. So like I understand that like I have a focus on the music that maybe is not necessarily present for everybody, but I feel like there is as much love to the music world in this as there is to the video game world. I mean, you can see it in the ways in which it treats the band, the way that they get signed, and then they feel like they fucking sold out playing at the club at the end, right? Like, and like there's this there you can see it in the ways in which the battles of the bands happen. Amp versus Amp is like a huge when I first saw Amp versus Amp, I was like, fuck yeah, dueling pianos, like let's do this. And then in the movie, there's like the realization that the band has where it's like, oh shit, this is not just like everything else we've done. This is Amp versus, like it's a huge plot point that it's actually going to be Amp versus Amp. And then in the fight happens there was a music nerd in me too that was geeking out the whole time along with a video game nerd.
Okay, so here's what I actually just had this discussion with somebody. Someone sent me a story that they wrote today, and they had let me know beforehand that it was heavily inspired by Weezer. And
okay.
so then I'm reading the story, and every time like one of those Weezer references happened, my response was, I get it. Like, I get it. Where if they had just sent me the story like sight unseen, my response to that stuff would have been like, oh, nice, right? And the music stuff, because it's subtle, you still get that, oh, nice feeling from it. Yeah. But then the video game stuff is so blatant and in your face. You're like, oh, I get it. Right? I get it. Like, video games, I get it. So yeah. I think that's what it is. It's the lack of subtlety with one while the other one is being subtly represented.
I wonder though if it's I mean, the ways in which we weave music into movies can be subtle. That's hard to do, like to even conceptualize with video game. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know if it's almost like comparing apples to oranges is what I'm getting at, right?
Like what I was going to say is that this is progress, right? We've been talking a lot about progress. This movie actually acting like, well, video games are a part of our culture, so it would make sense that people would reference them and that they would be a part of someone's like experience and connection to the world, the way that music is for a lot of people. That like this is that first step to be like, video games, they exist, they're part of the cultural zeitgeist, but it bursts out of the door to make sure that everybody gets that, where now I feel like it's a subtler thing. Like I'll reference
somebody will be wearing a t-shirt and it happens to say like fucking like Atlas on it, and we know that they're referencing like, oh, that's a Borderlands shirt because it's like I can tell from the type font and the company name that they're referencing a company in Borderlands. It doesn't say Borderlands on it, it says something else, but I get it, right? And like that subtlety doesn't exist in this movie. Like we see him wear an Atari shirt, like that's not subtle, right? Like but
in the same movie, that same subtlety, he puts on a Smashing Pumpkins shirt with the SP, and it's like, that's cool because it's a Smashing Pumpkins shirt, but it's also Scott Pilgrim. Like, it makes sense that would be his fucking body armor for the final fight.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's just like one thing is so subtle, and the other thing, it's just bashing you over the head. And it's like, oh, I wish it were. And what I was going to reference is specifically in Good Boys, the film from last year. Like, there's just a section where the kid is playing with the character creator in a video game, making a large busted woman. Right. And it's like, yeah, that's just part of the world now, right? Like that's how kids are exploring their sexuality before they know which internet to search for to find like the actual thing. And that spoke to me as like, that's a very realistic thing. There are some people I know who still do that. Yeah, wow, Sejin, this has been super good for me. This I'm exploring a lot.
Yeah,
Oh,
man. Scott and Pilgrim, a movie about growing up. And like here we are, still growing up.
oof, look at you, huh? What are you, Dr. Phil over there, putting a cap on it? Do you have
I'm
any
just
last thoughts, Jerry?
the world could be an ugly place sometimes.
But if you're Scott Pilgrim and you try to fight against it, you'll ultimately wind up dead. You have to learn to live with the world and accept it, and that opens a more hopeful future.
There you go.
I
Hey
don't know
man.
where any of that just came from. I'm scared. See, did Jerry Springer just take over my body?
Oh man.
All right. So, anything else that you'd like to add on the topic of Scott Pilgrim? Get it out, man. Like we are. I'm living in it right now, and I'm loving every minute of it.
I mean, one of the things that like we didn't really get into is a lot of the like filming techniques that get used in this movie that are just fucking glorious. Like Edgar Wright really, and he does this in everything that he does too. So, but as an example, the opening scene when they start to play in the living room and then the camera pulls back and the room is like 30 feet long all of a sudden, like that, just beautiful visual shit like that. It's another reason that I just love this movie, and this movie is just full of all sorts of really great visual moments.
Yeah. I agree. I think that this is a very competently made movie. My issue is specifically with the script. My issue was specifically with the script. Now that I understand the baggage I'm bringing with it, I'm going to give it a little bit of a pass. But the script that is produced off of the source material, honestly, I don't know how you could do much better with it. Like, unless you're getting to make a 6-movie franchise or like a Netflix series based on the entire thing, there are obvious things that are going to be sacrificed. And a lot of the obvious things are what is sacrificed.
Yeah. A lot of the obvious holes are the holes that clearly had to be made, right?
Yeah.
Which is, again, doesn't forgive the movie, but it definitely is a reason why you see that on screen.
Yeah, definitely. I guess. Oh, Amazon being a fucking mystical thing. That was the weirdest part of me for this movie. Yeah, she moved up here to work for Amazon. Amazon.ca. What's the website for that? Amazon.ca.
Yeah. Oh god. Like, stupid jokes like that still fucking get me. Quick, what's the number for 911? I still laugh at that shit. I don't know, man.
That was pretty good. That was a pretty good Spanky impersonation. If we ever decide the Little Rascals are not problematic and they're gonna do an animated series, you should audition to be Spanky.
Oh man, I'd love to.
Okay. See, I can't do that though. That's not good. That's bad. Sieging as Spanky good, deafin as Buckwheat bad. But that's the only line I got. I don't know any other things. You took the other one.
But you could have done the less problematic buckwheat line where everybody's like, "Look, your mom's over there," and he just goes, "Whoopee," and that's
I could go.
Whoopi
I
Goldberg.
got a dollar. I got a dollar. I got a dollar. Hey, 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 hey.
I still sing that every time I get paid.
Every time I get a dollar. That's
Oh,
the
shit.
other thing. Can we talk about they're all upset that they didn't get paid, but if every one of those coins that Gideon erupts into is a loonie, which is a Canadian dollar, for those not in the know, that's a significant amount of money right there.
All I could think of in that final moment when they're all like throwing the coins in is the fucking scene from the Trailer Park Boys movie when they rob the gumball machine from the movie theater. Oh god.
I've never seen that.
Are you? Holy shit! It's the funniest fucking. Oh, first of all, the movie playing at the movie theater is The Dark Canuck. It's so good. That movie is full of so many great stupid gags. All right, we don't need to talk about another Canadian movie right now. We'll do that later.
That's good. I guess I'll have to check this out. The amount of Trailer Park Boys things I've engaged with is zero.
Interesting. It's for something that outside of this country, I will admit this is not true in America, but for something that is so culturally relevant outside of this country, it's very interesting when I run into people that are like, I never even really experienced it, and I'm just like, it's weird. I get why not. It's purely because you're American.
Confessions, since we're at the confession section of the episode, Monty Python, I have seen The Meaning of Life. And that is it.
All
And
right.
that's because
Another
someone
interesting
told
one.
me that I needed to, like, we did a movie exchange. I got them to watch Empire Strikes Back because they're like, I saw Star Wars, I didn't really care for it. I've never seen any of the other ones. And I'm like, well, you should probably watch Empire Strikes Back. It's kind of one of the greatest films ever made. And I'm not even really a Star Wars guy. It's just like, it's really good story.
Good. Yeah, you know, that thing that the first one was kind of missing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's sort of what Empire has. And their response is, well, then you finally need to watch a Monty Python movie. And I'm like, fine, which one? And they're like, Meaning of Life. And I'm like, oh, okay. What the hell is
Oh,
Meaning
is
of
it?
Life? I
It's
know
an
Life
interesting
of
one.
Brian and I know Holy Grail. I enjoyed it. There are things in it I didn't enjoy. Like the guy eating until he explodes. Like,
Oh, that's like so classic. No, no, yeah, we're gonna have to delve into some other culturally like relevant older films. I think. I think maybe that's where we start going with some of these
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 time
these time capsule ones. Yeah.
I agree. That's sort of why I'm making this confession in the end that there are definite deficiencies in terms of things that are culturally relevant to everybody that I have just zero exposure to. And like Next Generation, I think I've seen 4 episodes of. Every episode of Next Generation I've seen, I friggin' love. I'm gonna just be honest with you. But
It's
like
Shakespeare in space, brother.
But yeah, but like I've seen like 4 episodes of Next Generation. Every time I'm like, man, that was awesome, and the people I'm with are like, that's not even a good episode, and I'm like,
Those are the best
it's
ones.
not. That was incredible. Picard's on some spa planet, and then suddenly he's saving the world. Like it's just like that Futurama.
I wonder where they got the idea. Oh man, yeah, man. So I'm excited that we did Scott Pilgrim because I do think it's one that is still culturally relevant. I think it's one that's going to be around for a while. Not the first time I've said that this episode, probably the last because we're wrapping up. But yeah, I think that. I think I'm good putting a pin in this movie for a while. Like, not for myself. I will go back to it, but like, I'm not going to feel the need to like impress it upon people for a while.
I am super hopeful that the game gets a re-release since it is the 10th anniversary and it looks viable again. Ubisoft just had a big like reveal event and everybody's reaction was kind of meh. And I imagine that if they had included Scott Pilgrim the game remastered for PS4, but specifically for the Switch, then everybody would be like praising Ubisoft right now. Like, you're finally bringing back the game that Tom forgot.
Excellent shit, man.
But
Good stuff.
I want to play the game again. But the problem is one of those level up games. Have you played the game? Am I telling you something that you know? The fact the fact that it's a level up game and there's like no real way to reset your progress once you've leveled up. So my Scott Pilgrim is super powerful.
Oh, okay. All right.
What do you mean? I kill everything with one hit except the bosses.
yeah. Well, so I'm laughing because, of course, I played that game for quite a long time and never quite got to that point. So I imagine the amount of time you must have put into it.
Well, you need to understand that okay. So on the Opus C, you have internet, but it's slow. It is very, very slow, and it is expensive. So I had to buy 2 $20 internet cards, and I hooked up my PlayStation 3 to my laptop using it as a connection point for it to get to the internet, and I downloaded the Scott Pilgrim game like over the course of 3 days. Like it took some doing to get it installed on my PS3, and then it was like one of the only games I had. I had Ghostbusters PS3, which I played and beat 100 times. I had Dead Rising 2, which my roommate took and hid because I was getting too invested in killing zombies. He said I was losing my humanity because of like the noises I would make while playing that game. And I had Scott Pilgrim.
Sorry. That's
No, you
fucking
feel
ridiculous.
free to laugh. I was gone. I was like mentally on another plane fighting zombies. Like, there's a reason why Dead Rising 2 is the horror survival game for me. Because I did it every possible way that I could.
Nice.
But yeah, so like there's that, and then I had the Scott Pilgrim game, which was multiplayer, so like we could have people over to our cabin and we would all play together, and like I just played as every character to get to the end, and then like I did it again and I did it again until everybody was level 16 with max stats.
Nice.
Because I didn't have anything else to do on the ocean. On the ocean. I don't know. I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much this was tied to my growing up. And sorry. Sejin, finish up. Do the thing that we do when we want to end an episode, because I could just keep talking.
So yeah, no, like I look forward to more episodes where we're gonna dive into some more of this stuff. I was really excited that we did the Jim Carrey trilogy, but from that has birthed this really great need in me to really kind of look at some other more relevant films. Not that we weren't doing relevant films before, but it feels like we were doing a lot of stuff that was really meaningful to us, and I think right now is a perfect time for us as a show to start looking outward. And I'm excited to do that with you, man. Like this is gonna be a good time. But for anybody that's got any suggestions about how to do that, you should definitely hit up Devin at Devin D. Decker on Twitter.
Yes, and if anybody would like to have a conversation with Sejin about Scott Pilgrim specifically, or if you have a guess about the mysterious girl who changed her profile picture to a Scott Pilgrim avatar, and like it has haunted the back of my mind ever since, you can have that discussion with Sejin at Siege versus the World. Sejin, is that inspired by Scott Pilgrim? Is that why you asked Siege versus the World?
Oh man, and the secret comes out. Yeah, man, that's what it's been for forever.
Look at that. Origins on this time capsule episode of the Say Report. Mm-hmm. Will, please bring us back to the present.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Sejin Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.